If you've not heard the recent Dead by Daylight news, then you might be surprised that developers Behaviour have confirmed that in the new installment of the Rift archive, David, the Mancunian thirst trap, is canonically gay. As you can imagine, this has caused quite a furore, but I'm here to tell you, as a gay man and DBD player myself, I see this as a good thing, and it's not just because I'd quite like David to pound me harder than the British currency right in front of Claudette salad. So, let's do this by going over some of the objections people are having to David, now more commonly known as Gavid, to being confirmed queer by the devs. Some of the more cynical voices see this move as mere pandering, and lazy at that. As a cynic myself, I do somewhat share that sentiment, but at the end of the day, is it really all that bad? Even if it's a politically correct box-ticking exercise. Firstly, creating more visibility and integration of marginalised groups into any game is never a bad thing. As a mixed-race person, and let's face it, hardly the sort of gentleman with the physique you'd find on the cover of a Men's Health magazine, it's already been fantastic to see Behaviour including such a diverse set of characters. Being able to see yourself and other people that exist within something like DBD is really welcoming and incredibly supportive. DBD has already been surprisingly diverse in terms of characters. Jane and Jeff are thick, that's spelled THICC, making it a great embrace of body diversity. Then there's a range of killers and survivors who are black, white, Latinx, and hail from places such as ancient Mesopotamia, Germany, Japan, and South Korea. We even have a killer that's specifically from the Patagonia region of Chile, which, by the way, is the only other place in the world where Welsh is spoken as a first language. At the end of the day, it never hurts to be more inclusive, even if the sentiment behind it is a little shallow. But here it's really not shallow, because broad diversity is already being deliberately built into the game. So, including an openly gay character is not exactly surprising from a game studio that has already been embracing diversity in other forms. As for retroactively making David gay, nothing in the established law up to this point has definitively defined his sexuality. His bio talks about his background, fall from grace, and the Rift Chapter 2 fleshed this out further. However, in said Rift, there is a mention of an exporting she as a pronoun, which brings me nicely to the next point. A man dating a woman doesn't automatically and permanently make them straight. Many queer people are in heteronormative relationships before they come to terms with their sexuality. They may even marry and have families in order to try and hide their true sexuality. Why? It's because, as children, we are basically groomed to be heterosexual throughout our lives, by our parents, school, and by the media. Heteronormativity is so in your face and incessant these days that you could say it's pushing an agenda. I say this as someone who has lived through Section 28 in the UK, where it was literally illegal for anyone to talk positively about homosexuality in schools, meaning only heteronormative relationships were discussed. This law was not repealed until as late as 2003, after 15 years. So, fuck you, Margaret Thatcher, and rot in hell, you haggard old cunt. Then, let's not forget that homophobia is still rife across the world. I myself have been the victim of a homophobic attack in London, which left me with a concussion and out of work for several weeks. I currently live in Poland, a country where you don't have to do too much Googling to know that it's not the best place to be openly LGBTQ+. Even in countries where there are better legal provisions against LGBTQ+ persecution, children are still made homeless because they're thrown out of their homes for coming out. People are still being murdered, such as Dr. Gary Jenkins in Cardiff last year. In short, being gay is f***ing scary, making it all the more difficult to be open about it. There are umpteen stories about gay men being in straight relationships before coming out of fear or societal pressure. Therefore, David's story development, including him having past relationships with women, doesn't make him straight or unable and ineligible to be gay. It's actually a very real reflection of the personal stories of actual gay men, and this character development is, in practice, complex and true to life. Oh, honey, please. I downright applaud Behaviour for making this rough, tough, tattooed fist fighter gay, because guess what? We're not all mincing queens sporting Kylie Minogue gold hot pants and leaving trails of glitter everywhere like fabulous slugs. While there's nothing wrong with being campy gym bunnies or twinks, gay men do come in all shapes, sizes and personalities like, you know, everyone else. There's been a slew, for decades, of gay men in media being portrayed as mostly campy and effeminate. Yes, there are many gay men that are like that, and there's nothing wrong with being campy and effeminate, but the media's portrayal usually pushes this as a blanket stereotype, which is at best tiring, but at worst quite hurtful and regressive. David being gay and an indomitable punching machine is another way that shows Behaviour is really embracing realistic diversity far beyond surface level cliches. So, there you have it. David, we celebrate your coming out, especially as your inclusion and development as a survivor is so much more than simple tokenism. In saying that, I'd love Behaviour to include other characters from the LGBTQ+ community, but also to continue to be diverse in other areas. For example, I'd love to see an overtly differently abled survivor, such as one with prosthetics, sight or hearing issues, or even in a wheelchair. Thank you, Behaviour, for being a great ally and continuing to be a real bastion of inclusivity in a medium where, all too often, a narrow archetype of hero figure still runs riot.